Hey, everybody, welcome to the latest installment of MSP Business School. As always, I'm your host here, Brian Doyle, and we're going to have a really fun chat today. We talk a lot about a lot of business topics here on the podcast, but one I don't think we talk about enough is customer success. And that's definitely one that is near and dear to my heart, both here on the podcast and in my professional life over at VCIO Toolbox. But we're going to have a much more interesting perspective than the ones I bring to the table today, as we've got former Vance Morris joining us today. He's a former Disney employee, and he's going to talk about Disneyfying all your life now. So, Vance, welcome to the podcast.
I appreciate it, Brian. Thanks so much for having me. And I don't think we'll be Disneyfying lives, but we'll just stick with business today, if that's okay with you. I got enough Mickey Mouse around me. I don't think I need any more.
No, but, definitely. We won't be, certainly brainwashing the world today. But I think
no, certainly not.
But I think what we're going to be showing the world today is that there is a unique way that Disney's approached things, and you were a big part of that. I was blessed in my career to get some time working with the House of the Mouse as well, and that allowed me to see behind the curtain a little bit to some of this. But before we get started, why don't you tell folks a little bit about your background and, how you came to be?
Sure, I appreciate that. So I did actually start my real work career with the Walt Disney Company, spent a little over a decade with them in their operations resorts area. My claim to fame is the design and operation of Chef Mickey's, which is a character dining destination. Some of you might be aware of that one. It only does $80 million a year, so it's nothing.
Small money.
I am living proof that you can leave the Disney company and not crawl up into a fetal position and die off. We can be successful. Had a couple other hospitality jobs. I was director of food service for the Smithsonian Museum System, NASA, and a few others. Along the way, I found out I make a really lousy employee. I just don't like to be told what to do. Hence my two ex-wives, probably the reason as well for that. So after getting fired a second time, I used to joke about or be leery about talking about that, but now it's who I am, and it was a long time ago, so I don't care. So anyway, so lousy employee me, I said, okay, we got to do something. So I did what every small child dreams of doing, and I opened a carpet cleaning business. And I took all of my Disney knowledge, though, of customer experience, customer service, retention, operations, and I put it into that business. And we, from the get-go, we're targeting a affluent audience. So, I didn't want to be cleaning rentals or Section 8 housing or any of that. We're going for the, $1 to $10 million homes, in our area. So, that's instructive in itself. You really have to have your avatar dialed in. Grew that. Along the way, I added a Oriental rug washing business and a mold remediation company. About 7 years ago, was able to put those on autopilot with all of the systems and processes I had. And so I hired a general manager, put him in charge. And now I spend about 90 minutes a week on those businesses. Pretty much cash and checks, kissing babies, that kind of thing. And that gives me the free time to do what I really enjoy doing, which is consulting and coaching with other business owners on how to create these extraordinary experiences that will lead into customer retention, or what I call raving fans for life. So if you don't nail the experience, you really don't have a prayer in the retention piece. So but yeah, so been doing this now since 20 home service businesses since 2007, and coaching and consulting since 2013. So here I am.
Yep, and I think you hit upon a couple things that our audience will identify with. We are a collection of accidental entrepreneurs over here in the MSP space, and most of us were not good employees. So I think we can all relate to that component. But I think also, what you've really highlighted is a history of being in service-related businesses and places where we're all customer-facing. And what I'm excited to hear from you is kind of some of your perspectives on how to wow your customer, how to make sure that they are having an experience that, again, relating it back to Disney, that makes you feel like you feel when you leave there. And that's tough to do with some of our businesses, right?
It is, but the thing is we don't want to copy what Disney's doing because, well, we don't have a Cinderella castle or a roller coaster or any of that. But we do want to adapt the strategies and tactics that Disney is using on a daily basis and adapt them for, our MSP, our dental practice, whatever it is. There's a lot of lessons there that can certainly be used in our world.
So, maybe let's kick off with what you think are some of the most critical parts about delivering, amazing customer service.
Well, unfortunately, the bar is set very low. So, I mean, we've all been there to the restaurant, that, the service is horrible, or, the contractor that says, yeah, we'll be there on Monday, but they don't tell you which Monday they're coming. And so just doing a little bit more really vaults you above all of your competitors. And it's really the basics. Answer your phone, preferably live, show up on time, and do what you say you're going to do and stand behind your work. Now, it all sounds very basic, and I'm sorry it's not sexy, but really that's the basic. And if you can't get those four things down, don't try to do anything else because you're just going to screw things up. But get those four things really solidified. And then you can start adding on the experiences that people are going to start talking about. Trust me, like I'll every once in a while I have to answer our phones, and people are genuinely surprised that we answered the phone. Oh my God, you answered the phone. Well, yeah. What else? What else would I do? Or my technicians, they arrive at the homes on time, and they're like, "Holy crap, you're on time!" And so. But what we do is we create experiences out of all of the boring and mundane things we have to do day in and day out. And that's exactly what Disney does. They just figured out a way how to make arriving at a resort fun and exciting. So I give you a quick example for our carpet cleaning business, which we do both commercial and residential. So you guys can even copy this if you want. But one of the boring things we got to do is get into the house in order to provide our service. So we've scripted out an entire experience for this, and it starts out in the street because we park in the street. We don't park in the driveway. God forbid I got an oil leak. Now I got something else I got to clean up, right? The technician gets out in a clean, crisp uniform because he carries extra uniforms with him on the truck. He also does not smell because I forbid cologne and forbid smoking while you're on the job. Nothing worse than some guy who smells like the Marlboro Man who just took a shower in Axe standing in your kitchen. It's absolutely disgusting. And so, we'll go up to the front door. We've got a little gift and our special mat. We lay the mat down, which is just a logoed foot mat. We knock on the door. We don't ring the bell because salespeople ring bells, friends knock. We take a couple of steps back. We wait for the customer to answer the door. Mrs. McGillicuddy answers the door, and we say, "Hi, my name's Stephen. I'm here to create your healthy home. May I come in?" So we don't just barge in. When she says yes, we do an exaggeration because, again, theater, show, we exaggerate wiping our feet on the mat. Then we put little booties on our already clean shoes. And as we're going into the home, we present Mrs. McGillicuddy with a gift. Now, when was the last time you had a home service professional come to your house? And I'm not talking like a tchotchke, like a chip clip or something, or a pen. I'm talking like, here's a nice little box, give you a gift. I'm going to hazard a guess it probably hasn't happened. But for us, it's not a big deal, but for the customer, it is. So in there is a bottle of spot remover, a bag of cookies, and a little note from me saying, thanks so much for allowing us into your home. Now, that is the process for us to get into the house. I mean, it's all a 2 minutes worth of stuff that's happening, but talk about word of mouth marketing. Oh my God, you'll never guess what the carpet cleaner did when he showed up at the house. They gave me a gift. And
it is those little subtleties, right? The devil's in the details, and it's always been that way. Things like parking the truck out in the street rather than the driveway in case something's leaking. It sounds so subtle, it's probably not even observed by the end user, but it would be observed if the problem comes to be, right? The wiping the feet and then putting on the shoes. For some, it's really a show of respect, right? In some cultures, that's a very big deal. So, those little steps that you may overlook, overlook the fact that you've built them into a process is really what does set apart, because different people kind of cling on to different things. And you never know which one it'll be. And of course, a gift is a gift, right? Everybody's going to enjoy that part of it and certainly feel different. But it's those little steps along the way that you're outlining that really intrigued me. And, MSPs out there, we all know we're invited guests into a lot of customers' businesses too. What are the steps that our technicians are taking going into their, uniforms, timeliness? These are all simple things and things that I used to browbeat into my guys too, and if you're going to be late, you call them up and you offer them to buy them a coffee. Make something part of that day was one of our things too, that if you're going to do it, A, that coffee's coming out of your pocket, Mr. Guy that's late, and two, the customer feels good. But, these little steps really make a difference. And, I really commend you on building such a strong process.
Yeah, and like I said, it's nothing earth-shattering either, as we both mentioned, but, what we're trying to do also is hit every single sense that a human has, from smell, which is actually, smell is the strongest sense when it comes to memories. So if we show up, like I said, and I'm not kidding, showing up like you just smoked a pack of Marlboros and, bathed in some cheap cologne, that's what people are going to remember, because that's the number one sense. We'd rather them not even think about odor
I think
at all.
especially in what you do today with, rugs being part of that, olfactory sense is even more prevalent than maybe even the IT guy, because you're coming in to clean. So if you're coming in perceptually dirty, you're already got strike against you.
Oh yeah, exactly. And the gift though, when we implemented it, it actually starts a process called reciprocity, where I give something to you, you feel compelled to give something back to me. When we implemented that gift, we actually saw a 26% increase in our mid-tier package, which was about an additional $65,000, $70,000 a year in sales just from that little $4 gift. So while that was a happy byproduct, I wasn't going into it thinking, oh, I'm going to give them something, they're going to give me something back. It was just, we started this and we're like, daggone, we're selling a lot of these stain fighter packages. What did we do? Oh, we implemented a gift. So,
did you find that that also kind of drove some of the referral traffic up a little bit higher as well?
100%. Yeah.
The MSP industry is one that lives very heavily on the referrals. Obviously the contract values are quite a bit different than what you experience.
Sure.
But, when people say to me, well, how do you work on getting referrals? It's wowing people. It's doing these little things. It's having a tactic that makes them think differently about you. And you've been spot on, at least in my opinion thus far, Vance, in the sense that it takes the small things to really wow people. I look at my own family when we have an experience out. What's the thing that they take away? Usually the invisible, right? Something that happened very small that really, really hit them and made them feel in the feels, as they say, right?
Yeah. Well, and oops, sorry. When we're talking referrals, though, referrals should not be accidental. I mean, they really should be engineered. And so, like, between the first phone call and when the technician leaves the home, we're touching them 11 times about referrals. So we're giving them the impression, literally, that, in order for you to do business with us, you need to refer. Now, it's said a lot more eloquently than that, but that's the general message that's relayed. The technician's business card is a tear in half. So one part is his info, the other part is a coupon for the homeowner to give to somebody else, and then we have certificates and bounce back programs and all that kind of stuff. But if you think you're going to get referrals just from doing a good job, yeah, you might get a couple, but if you want to engineer it, you've got to really put those points in place so that the customer almost feels compelled to refer you.
Amazing. So, I'd love to pivot back if you don't mind, because, again, we talked a little bit about Disney at the beginning. There's obviously some amazing approaches they do there to really instill the feelings and have people get happy about spending most of their day in line, right? So,
right.
And I shared with you that we had some experiences, and one of the things that blew me away right off the rip with Disney was, now as a partner as opposed to a consumer, The fact that the first thing they wanted to do is make sure that my people had a basic understanding of the Disney way. And
Right.
each person that was coming on site that was going to be on Parkside, and we did some sustainability programs around AV equipment and things like that there. They were taught little things like when you gesture, you never point. It's always a
Right.
full hand swipe and do that. We were instructed that, if somebody comes up to us thinking that we were Disney employees, we were not to shrug them off, not to tell them no, but we were to take them to the nearest cast member and make sure that they were then taking them or able to satisfy their need. So again, it wasn't an amazing thing, but it instilled some of those core Disney principles, the ones that I think we overlook every day, but make the experience what it is, and made sure that even their vendors who are coming in who might not even encounter these moments knew what to do if they happened. Maybe you could talk a little bit more, from being inside the belly of the beast, some of the things that you guys really felt were the most important to customer service, customer satisfaction, and of course, retention. Bring them back another trip.
Yep, certainly. Well, and you mentioned waiting in lines, which is what you do a lot of at Disney. But they've perfected what I call line entertainment, where they entertain you while you're in line. And actually being in line is part of the attraction. If you go to the Haunted Mansion or, Pirates of the Caribbean, you're going through the old fort and everything. So if you skip the line, you're actually missing part of the attraction. We can relate that to our industries in that what do people wait for in our world? Are they waiting for a proposal? Are they waiting for approval on a proposal? And each one of those wait periods is an opportunity for us as a business to deliver some value. So if you've got a week that is, between initial phone call and first site visit, okay, what can you send them via FedEx that's going to be of value that shows that you are, serious about this meeting? Maybe it's a copy of your book. Maybe it's, a couple of brochures put in a FedEx envelope with a pack of cookies or whatever. Stand out, because your competitors, they're just going to send an email and that's it. But if you're staring at a 70,000 six-figure contract, spring for the $9 FedEx.
Yep.
Trust me, it's going to go a long way. So that's one thing that we can take from Disney is, okay, what do we do while our customers are waiting and have the opportunity to really second guess their purchase or have buyer's remorse or anything like that? So we need to constantly stay in touch with them. The other thing is having a strong mission for your company. Disney's mission is very simple and very easy. Any minimum wage employee can wrap their brain around it. It's we make people happy. That's it. We make people happy. So it's not I'm sure they've got a mission statement, on the shelf in Burbank somewhere, nobody knows what it is. But every employee there knows make people happy. So your job might be to sweep the street, but your mission is to make people happy, which is why the custodian will immediately go get a brand new ice cream cone the minute your kid drops theirs, swoops it in because we want to make them happy, and then he cleans up the ice cream. So really, you've got to have a very strong mission for your employees to wrap their brains around. Certainly we could talk about attention to detail. Holy crow. I was there, I was telling you earlier, I was there last month, and I was sitting outside having a cup of coffee early in the morning, and the groundskeeping crew was out there trimming the hedges. And so there's one guy with the big set of hedge trimmers, and he's carving and doing and whatnot. And then this lady comes by with a pair of scissors, and she's fine tuning. These are just hedges. It's not like a statue or something. Trimming, and then not 10 minutes later, the supervisor comes by with her own pair of scissors to snip and tweak everything that the first two missed. That's a fanatical attention to detail. And I think, and we're all indeed, MSP, gee whiz, that is a highly detailed business. So what details, again, outside of maybe hooking things up or running wire, things like that, but what details will you focus on that are going to make the customer experience?
Well, for the MSPs listening, of course, one of the things that I always looked at and our team did was kind of have a quality assurance process around anything you deliver, right? Whether it's a follow-up mechanism for on-site projects, or even if it's just a task, making sure somebody else validates now it works the way it's supposed to. These little behind-the-scenes things make sure you don't get that rework phone call. And those are the ones that are most frustrating to the customer. So that's how we can kind of translate exactly what you're talking about, that fine art of detail, into what we can do as MSPs. You said line attainment earlier, or I hope I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah, line attainment.
Line attainment. When you talk about what they do inside of there, I don't think it needs to be lost how many people or how many characters are roaming the parks too.
Yeah.
Looking for the kids that might be a little restless, and then working that entertainment, which is another attention to detail. And, when you think about that from a traditional business sense, it's that staying on top of your customer and making them informed. One of the worst things is no news. Right. And not communicating any updates can be frustrating, because most of the time the person across the table from you needs to communicate up. I don't know if you find that as much maybe in what you're doing today, Vance, but what are some of the things that you've seen kind of traditional businesses overlook that are easy wins that they can implement with very little effort?
Yeah. So I just want to go right back to the attention to detail thing and the line attainment, because people will say, okay, well, that's all nice, but what does that get me? Well, while we all want an ROI on stuff, this one is kind of that investment in the customer for a future ROI. So if you look at it right now, for one day in one Disney park, it's $180, right? If you go to Six Flags, one of their amusement parks, might be $60. Now, arguably, is Disney 3x or 4x better than Six Flags? Maybe. But Six Flags can't command a higher price, because when you wait in line for 2 hours for whatever monster roller coaster, they don't do anything. You're standing there. I mean, there's no music, there's no entertainment, it feels like a solid 2 hours you're standing there. So there is a financial payoff by doing this stuff. I think really the small wins, certainly, you can, you're meeting a purchasing manager for the first time. There's nothing wrong with coming in with a gift. There's nothing wrong with, we've created for our commercial clients the purchasing manager's guide to commercial carpet and protecting your investment. And it's a 20-page guide, nothing salesy in there. It's just 20 pages of information on how, the facilities guy, excuse me, can take care of the carpet and make it last longer, since it's such a huge investment. So bringing collateral like that is not necessarily salesy, but again, is adding value. Certainly, the uniform, good gracious, we talked about that. But one of the things Disney does to ensure that these things happen, which I use in my businesses, is a good show, bad show walkthrough. So every morning, we go through our vehicles and we inspect them. One, did we wash them? So, and do the employees look good? Disney does it. Is there a light bulb out? Does something need painting? And they document it on this good show, bad show report. And then, excuse me, they report all of those things to the right departments to get it fixed. And then the next shift that comes in, they do a good show, bad show walkthrough. And they are checking to make sure all the stuff that was bad show in the morning is now been corrected and fixed and ready to go. And it's just a continuous cycle. And it is a continuous cycle of continually getting better and better. And so once you get, it's like a flywheel. Once you get this thing moving, it just becomes part of the day and things like that. So I don't know if that was enough examples, or
No, I
you need
think
a couple more?
that's hitting upon it, especially, we're getting near the end of our time. So I want to make sure that we cover off on the things that you find most important. So first, folks, I'm going to put up on the screen for those of you that are watching via YouTube. For those that are listening on the podcast, this will, of course, be in the show notes. But we've got up Vance's LinkedIn. Certainly connect with him, get engaged. He can share more with you, and certainly, follow his stream. You're going to get great and actionable advice. But I think you've got a few other things you do out there in the community as well, Vance.
Yeah, quite a bit. I take business groups down to Disney for 3 and 4 day full immersion boot camps. So it's pretty much everything I talked about on steroids. And at the end of it, you've got a blueprint for how to Disneyfy your MSP. And then for everybody who's listening, I do have a little gift that's called 52 Ways to Wow Your Customer Without Breaking the Bank. So it's 52 low or no cost ways, one wow every week of the year for you that you can use, that is going to generate those referrals, generate that word of mouth that we're all looking for. So if you're not feeling creative and you're like, all right, how do I wow somebody? This is a great document. I mean, it's only 4 pages long. Go pick a wow out and do it next week.
Yeah, go to wow52ways.com. That's wow52ways.com and download that. I think those are the best kinds of tips, the ones that you can do really quickly once a week and really, or that are available to you in a weekly format like this. But, pick the ones that are very easy to implement for your organization, because customers remember what's good. And then the other challenge is customers will let you know what's bad. And it's very tough when you start fighting that battle too often with a client, because you're really going to be in jeopardy for long term. And, as MSPs, those contracts are not cheap. And those become big gaps when we lose a customer. So when we look at little steps we can take to improve our retention and give ourselves a better chance, that's great. And I think Vance has shared a number of ways that you can look at it today. I really appreciate you joining me today, Vance. There was great info. Before we wrap up, any closing statements that you want to share?
Yeah, I'm not a big guy for quotes and things like that. And I really only have one, because I'm all about implementation. And so it's, you won't profit unless you implement. So take one idea you heard today, whether it's from this podcast or something you read, and go and implement it. If you don't implement it, you're not going to move the needle and you won't be able to, have any change. So implementation is the name of the game.
Awesome. Well, Vance, thank you so much. Again, audience, we will be posting up those links to both wow52ways.com and to Vance's LinkedIn on the show notes that you'll get with this podcast. Vance, really appreciate you joining us. Customer service and customer experience is universal. It doesn't matter what industry you come from. And I appreciate you sharing some of the great tactics you're using, both in your current commercial and, of course, in the days of the D. So thank you so much.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You bet.